Good morning, sunshines. We are diving in to the first of the four agreements on many levels today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Don Miguel Ruiz wrote a book in 1997 called The Four Agreements. It has been a top international seller for decades, and the four lessons provided in this book are substantially supportive for us stepping into a happier and better way of being so that we don't get so lost in the stories we create in our mind that are untrue. And the reason why I really wanted to dive into agreement by agreement is because if you're just starting personal development or you don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe you haven't dove into it at all, when you read, at least for me, when you read the four agreements the first time, it can kind of be like, what? Like, we're doing this book club right now, and I had some friends say, like, it's good information, but it's kind of like weird and kind of confusing. And we're talking about this black magic and what's going on. And it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. And people sometimes don't make it through the experience of reading the four agreements, let alone the benefit of practicing the four agreements. So I wanted to break it down in some different terms to see if that's supportive for you guys. And then that way, if you haven't read it, then you're still getting the same acknowledgement of the lesson. So first things first, though, the reason why we spend time in these four agreements and what Don Miguel Ruiz shares is that you're able to live a heavenly existence on earth when you live in this type of way. When you start to acknowledge that the words you choose to think and speak and receive are directly forming your life and your experience. Whether you feel like right now you're living in extreme happiness and excitement and joy, that's a reflection of the words you're thinking, you're using, and you're choosing to receive. Or if you feel like things are always so hard for you, they're always so complex, they're challenging and maybe depressive and sad, that also is a direct reflection of the word you choose to think about, to use, and to receive. And the first time I read the four agreements, I just put it right back away. Like I started reading the first chapter. I'm like, my brain was not fertile for those words yet. It couldn't even really like begin to understand what he was talking about. And if you guys are feeling anything like that when you pick up the book, first recommendation is skip the first chapter, dive right into the four agreements. And then with each agreement, I'm hoping that this supports and helps you in really absorbing, understanding, and practicing it. The other thing is, as you go on this journey of mindset expansion and you start to realize that you have the power to control your existence and your happiness. And I know that things are going to hit you and happen, right, that you didn't plan on or you didn't ask for. For example, my baby boy's cancer, there are things that land in our lives, but we still are always controlling our mindset, how we show up to situations, which will influence completely what happens next in our world. And when you start to go through and you enter this world of personal development, it's going to lead you on this wild ride of all sorts of authors. And spoiler alert, most all of them are saying very similar things in different ways because it's truth. You know, so many of these lessons are truth from the beginning of time, but we just haven't figured out a way for them to land within our hearts. So when I picked this book up again, I don't know, it was like years later, it just made sense because I had started practicing my personal development. So in terms of the first agreement, just to give you guys an example, Don Miguel Ruiz, he wrote this in 1997, right? And he put these agreements into Word in this form for us to experience. And now millions and millions of people are reading his book. Before that, and there's many more examples in this, impeccability of your word, the fact that the words you choose to use, and word is just Word is just languaging around the thoughts. You have thoughts, and when you put words to it, that's how we as humans communicate what those thoughts are. That's what word is, right? It's really our thoughts put into a form so we can communicate it back and forth. Now, before Don Miguel, one of the examples, Napoleon Hill in 1937 wrote some different books. You have Think and Grow Rich if you haven't read that, but his form of, you know, this impeccability with your word is what you sorry, you think what, oh man, my handwriting is great, right? You become what you think about. You become what you think about. Same thing as impeccability of our word, a little bit different, but it's the same conceptual fact. Then you can take it back to Buddha. Buddha in 563 BC to 583 BC said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. You can take it to words of the Bible in Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinks in his heart, so is. Proverbs 4:23. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. This is not new news. The first agreement is not new news. It's packaged in a different way to help us continue to see that this agreement changed our world. So let's dive into what that means. Like what that was a lot of words you just used, Cal, and still I have no effing clue what you're talking about. Perfect. That's perfect. Let's get into it. Impeccability of your word. And I want to take it into a couple different examples today so you can really see how this lands. And this is very closely connected with the second agreement of taking things personally, but I'm still going to do a separate one on that. But you are going to see there's like crossovers of it if you've read the full book and you have full understanding. So the first thing is I want you to think about, as you grew up, the words that were used on you. I know that sounds weird, right? But the external influences that formed your thoughts, your beliefs, your standards, and your way of being. Because all of us are at the mercy of the people who raise us to initially start, like, just imagine your brain, your mind as this empty field, right? Like it starts this empty field and they start to plant little seeds, and those seeds continue to grow throughout your life, especially when you nourish those. So a great example could be a parent who has chosen the life for themselves of poverty, of scarcity, of fear, of anger, of impatience. You know, just picture maybe a more dark uh way of growing up and being raised. That parent and all of the words they use, and not even just the words they use with themselves and the actions that they betray, and their kids get to see them act a certain way. You don't even have to be teaching the lesson. The way that they show up is planting little seeds in the brains of this little baby and this little 2-year-old and this little 5-year-old and this 10-year-old. And as each one of those different ideas is planted, that the world is scary, it's a place of fear, you will be surrounded by scarcity, it's going to be a life of poverty, there's going to be a lot of anger and impatience. That's just the way people are. That's how people show up. They will always hurt you. They will, whatever those are, every single one of those ideas that was planted in your little baby brain and continue to be watered and fed by those same individuals as you grew up, or the individuals that you started to attract and find and seek out because you had an agreement with yourself. Poverty, scarcity, fear, anger is a way of being, and you find that in other people and you are attracted to those people and you bring them into your world because that's what you know and what you're comfortable with. And all of a sudden you don't see joy, happiness, abundance, excitement, and belief. You don't get to see that because you're actively not finding it because of the word that your parents, your surrounding, your influencers as a child placed within you. And going back and starting at that level can be really challenging for some people because they get angry. I didn't choose that for myself. And they're the ones that did it. All of a sudden, there's this immediate desire to place blame on the people around you when really that person that influenced you in that way was doing their best with what they had, especially if they didn't know four agreements, if they had never studied or practiced. They were stuck because they don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and you can't blame and push and force and be upset at people who don't know what they don't know, because that's just the way that life is. So, as you acknowledge the different things and seeds that were planted in your mind as a child, the first thing we're just doing is seeing how the word works. Okay, seeing how the word works. Now, I want to switch that right away. If you're a parent or if you're around children, you're doing the same thing to them because they don't yet know that they have the choice of assumption number two, which is taking things personally. They don't understand that yet, which you're going to learn if you continue to follow along this process, that that doesn't have to be the way of being. It is until we acknowledge that it's not, and then we get to move on. But for kids, I've got four children, and if I tell my youngest that he is sick, he's going to embrace the sick. But instead, every single day, we use words that are going to quote unquote cast a different spell, right? That are going to bring a different result of you are healthy, you are healthy, you are healthy. And the words that you use around the young, fertile minds around you, everybody that you're exposed to, the words that you choose to use on them, when you just tease a child, and I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, seriously, Callie, you're taking it too far. But when you just tease a child and you tell them that they're not smart, like, oh man, you're being like ridiculous. You are not smart, bro. Like that, yeah, that you're not smart. Something as simple as that is it can be completely life altering for that small human if they choose that agreement and they choose to take that on. I have a friend and her brothers always called her like she was the dumb blonde. Those were the words that she used. And they were just like, oh, we're just teasing. That's just what people say. Oh, dumb blonde jokes, whatever. And she took that agreement and she owned it, man. She owned it in such a way that she let it drive her life, trying to prove them wrong, being in that existence, or that you're fat. Problems with weight forevermore, because all of a sudden you have a problem with that. You were called fat. Little things like that, the words that you choose to express to the people around you, their brains are absorbing it. And I could do a full another, and maybe I will talk about, actually I will for sure, but talk about how we choose as parents, as grown-up influencers to our little ones, the words we choose to use with them is completely affecting and going to affect their life until they hopefully have the ability to step into their own personal four agreements and realize they have a choice to decide that that agreement you cast upon them is not true. I love the example in the book where they just talk about like a mom who had like an extreme headache, and the little girl was just singing and she was so joyous and she was having so much fun and it was such a beautiful day. And kids, they're just like da, 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 singing, and the mom's just like getting angrier and angrier and more impatient. And finally, she's just like, "Shut up! You have an ugly voice. Like, just we've all lost it. You like what? You have such an ugly voice. Just knock it off." And the mom didn't even like mean to do that. She wasn't trying to hurt her kid, but forevermore, like no, that little girl, she no longer sang. She just stopped singing completely, and not just stopped singing, stopped talking, stopped showing up for herself, lost confidence in her way of being because of one statement. The words that you use, the words that you choose are so unbelievably influential to people who don't know how to practice agreement number two. Which our children, they don't know what taking things personally means. They don't understand that yet. Okay, so two different ways when you're looking at the first agreement that your word is so important is how it was used and acknowledging how it was used on you in the past, so you can see that how you use it currently is affecting those minds, those little minds around you. Okay, let's move away from kids now. Let's talk about the other adults in our life. It doesn't stop from like kids. It's not parent to kid. That's not the only way that it works, or influencer to young mind. This happens in our day to day world, especially in people who have not chosen to take on ownership, complete and utter ownership of their own person. And they want to use the blaming category on their life. Their life is going a certain way because of X, Y, and Z, and they're going to blame everything when they're not practicing the second agreement. So, looking at this, okay, let's look at how you have been affected by what the people in your world, your could be your friends, it could still be your parents, it could be your neighbors, it could be the people you follow on social media. Wherever you're exposing yourself, the words that those people are using, the way that they're speaking, could be and likely is influencing you and your thoughts and your beliefs if you choose to take those on. So, for example, somebody comes up to you and directly says like, dude, you're an idiot. Why would you ever choose to go into that career? And all of a sudden you're like questioning your career. Like, why did I? Maybe I should have. Maybe I should be looking over there and doing what they're doing or doing what they're doing. Like when we, oh man, when we got pregnant with the littles, right? So I have a 15-year age gap between my kids. And when we got pregnant with the youngest ones, it was amazing the amount of opinions people felt like they needed to give us about how we were batshit crazy to start all over. I could have chosen to receive and accept and agree to that. I could have chosen that agreement and taken those words personally, which we'll talk about in the next one about agreement number 2, and started to form a new level of like soil, like a fertile mindset of mine about how this was going to be a horrible idea and what was I doing, and step into a space of parenting that lacks patience and joy. But instead, I was like, no, that's your word. Let's talk about that more in the second agreement because that's such a great example. But that's their word. But we are consistently influenced by the words that other people are using. And the word doesn't have to be directed towards you, especially if you have a fertile mind for scarcity. Let's just say that you have a fertile mind for scarcity. You just don't think things are ever going to work out completely financially. Your brain is going to find your reticular activating system, the back of your brain, your subconscious, even though you're not meaning to, it is going to find and seek out and connect to every one and every statement that's made around scarcity and how that's a way and fact of life. And that's what you're going to see. And that's what you're going to think the norm is. If you have concerns about your weight, you probably think that everybody else is judging you for your weight, and you're looking out there at all of these other people who are living a different way because they look a different way, and you're making up these stories in your mind with your word. And even though they're not directing anything towards you, you're still choosing to receive that. This is really hard because all the 4 agreements like mix up so much in my brain, as they should, because they do work together. But point is the words that other people use are influencing you if you're allowing them to. Same thing, the words that you're using to your friends, to other adults on your platforms, they're hitting someone in some direction. Check out the person who's like consistently negative on social media, and you watch their stuff and you're just like, ugh. Some of you guys hit snooze and you just like, then they don't know that you even like blocked them, like, right, you just snooze their information. So you do not have to see any of their stuff anymore because literally it's just dragging you down. But others of you are just like, you get on it. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to comment back, about their ex and about the things. And it starts to influence and seep within you. Right? Those words that we use and the words that are used upon us can have a major effect. And here's where it gets really big. Okay, here's the final aspect of the word that I want to talk about today. So now you're thinking about it. And I hope what you're thinking is like, shit. Like, number one, I see what she's talking about. The words, the things that I was taught as a child, like that has influenced me in many different ways. And maybe it doesn't have to be that way. And the second thing is you're just like, wow, so that means the words that I use consistently around my kids, when I say this is wild. When I look at myself, I'm like, ugh, you're disgusting, or man, I feel like I look fat today, or whatever, and your little girl hears you, You weren't even talking to her, but she's receiving those words and they're starting to plant little seeds about how she's not good enough and how being a certain way is inappropriate or it's bad or she's not going to be loved or accepted because of that, because you use those words in front of them. So I hope you're starting to see that, in addition to how that happens with your friends in your grown-up relationships and the people that you follow. But now here's the, I would say, like, where it really comes together. It's the words that you use with yourself and about yourself, the words that you say out loud, like I just said. Okay, so it could be the fact that you look in the mirror in the morning and you tell yourself how you're not good enough and how you're fat and how you're lazy and how you're not getting whatever done and how you've been impatient and how you made the wrong decisions. Whatever those ill words are that you're using towards yourself are absolutely going to become. This like really is where it ties in with Napoleon Hill and Buddha and our verses from the Bible of that's saying, right? What we say out loud is going to become. We are creating our next way of being and what we are going to attract into our worlds. My son just walked in and asked if we are going to the actual beach today. He really wants to get back on an airplane and go on a trip. My word was no, not today, because that is the truth. Okay. So, but where it really connects is the words that we don't even say, that which we think about, however we formulate the different thoughts in our mind is truly what's creating us. Let's just pause for a second. Hold on. Hey guys, can you please go downstairs? Mommy's finishing her video, remember? Thank you. I love you. So the words that you choose to go over and over and over again in your brain is going to become, or already is, what world you live in. I'll give you a little bit of a more extreme example. So then you can relate it to yourself on different levels, right? So when we found out that my baby boy, Whit and John, had this rare cancer and this rare disease, and we were in the hospital, I had the opportunity in that moment to choose what continuous thoughts I was going to dive into. I got to tell myself what I wanted to focus on at that point. And I'm so unbelievably grateful that I had already met these authors, these books, these concepts, and that I understood the importance of that and how it would directly be forming the next chapter of my life. My attitude and my choice of thoughts would form my next chapter. And I knew it was going to be a chapter of cancer. That was obvious. I had already learned that. But what was I going to do about it? Right? Acknowledging what we can and cannot change and showing up how we can best for ourselves and the people around us. So in that moment, my thoughts move towards directly and strongly and aggressively thoughts of faith and belief and let go, let God, and calmness as much as I could, and comfort and care, of advocation, and choosing joy and gratitude through our cancer journey, even though it was not an easy journey. And I mean, it's incurable, right? Like we're still in it, whatever, but we're on the other side of chemo. We're on the other side of ringing the bell right now. And I got to choose what our life was going to be like during that time. I could have easily chosen complete sadness, acceptance. This is just how it is for our family. I could have chosen not to embrace community and do a woe is me. We're all alone and we're in the dark. And by the way, as a cancer family, you do feel pretty alone. Like there is this like sense of, especially a rare cancer, like there's not a lot of other mothers or families that knew what we had gone through. But instead, I chose to seek those people out, to build those relationships in their rarity. And even though it's only 4 other families, like I have found that and embraced that. But I had the choice, because in all of life, whether it's extreme examples like that of, like crisis, we get to choose what we think about in the forms that we're going to start to develop and create in our life. And in the times of joy and goodness, it's the exact same thing. You get to choose what you think about. And there are so many documented cases of manifestation of illness and healing based upon the words that you choose to use on yourself, out loud or in your brain, it doesn't matter. So I really encourage you today to acknowledge the way you talk to yourself, acknowledge your self love, acknowledge the beliefs that you've decided are true at this point. So if you've decided that your finances will always just be this way, your relationships will always just be this way, things will always be hard for you, you're going to be pushing people away, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not fit enough, you're not healthy enough, you're not kind enough, whatever those words that you're using on yourself will actually be the truth, because that's what you're choosing. And that's how you are choosing to show up. And for those of you who are choosing that right now, that's a hard pill to swallow. But it's the truth now. It was the truth in 1997 when this book was written. It was the truth in 1937 when Napoleon Hill talked about it. It was the truth in 483 BC when Buddha was talking about it. It was the truth when the Bible was being written. It has always been the truth. What you think about is what becomes and what is. Not always like right away is, because the more you think about it, the more that it becomes. And the power behind that, the true like aha, this full conversation and the beauty of the first agreement, which is be impeccable with your word, is that you get to choose different. You get to realize that your story of life is just that. It's you're the only one who will ever have this experience. You're the only one who will ever walk that walk the way that you've walked. You are the only one, and you're creating this whole made up story in your life. And as you design it up here, it starts to line up in your real world. There's a little piece there, there's a little piece there. You are the author of your own book. And the power behind that is that right now you're holding the pen and you get to write the next words. If you're sick of showing up as a gossip, as one who chooses anger, who, one who doesn't enjoy, like have like joy in their heart. If you've been choosing that, the next word that you write is life changing. If you desire it to be, it is no matter what, right? It's life changing no matter what, because it is going to direct your next step. But you get to choose which direction you want to go, and that right there is so damn powerful. And if I just imagine like living in this world where people who have previously felt, so beyond imperfect, instead of embracing the beauty of their imperfection, people who have felt like they aren't worthy and they're not enough and they're not loved, if they could just start loving themselves. If you think that you're not worthy, if you think that you're unloved, you can't receive love from anyone else until you can receive love from yourself. You're not going to be enough for anyone else until you're enough for yourself. The way you show up in your personal relationship with you and the thoughts you start to tell yourself will dictate your next chapter of your life. And I just see this world where people take that on a different level and start making new choices and breaking the agreements that are not true. That's not true. You're the one choosing to believe that. You're the one taking it personally. You're the one taking it on, and you're the one running with scarcity and anger and aggression and sadness, and you're just going for it, and you don't have to. The final thing, you guys, is just to make sure that you understand when Don Miguel is using impeccability of your word, what that means as he describes impeccability, that is complete truthfulness to yourself, right? That is, taking care on a whole complete level of yourself and choosing nothing that would hurt you. You telling yourself that you're fat, that is hurting you. You telling yourself that you're unworthy, that is hurting you. That is not impeccability of word. That is you choosing an agreement that is untrue, but you're choosing to live in that light when you don't have to. Choosing light, choosing joy, choosing positivity, choosing kindness, letting go of all gossip. Gossip is the perfect example of the value of word. When you use words as poison for others, choosing to completely remove that from your world is so powerful, as is the first agreement. So I hope that whether you've read the book or not, this makes more sense now when you look at your word and your agreement and how you can step into your next chapter. So, quick reflection, right? And then we'll be done for today is look at and I always like to take these talks. If you take a talk or if you listen to something and you just walk away and you go bake cookies right now, high five, but did you get anything out of it? Like, right? Take some time to reflect upon how this correlates with your current world and just do some observing. That's what we did for book club this month. Like, we're taking a full week to think about the impeccability of our word, and we're just observing how it's showing up in our lives, and observe how maybe it impacted you as a child. And really, if you're like, oh, but that like makes me feel uncomfortable, make sure you listen to the next one about taking things personally so you could understand how to break that cycle, break that thought pattern. But how your word used on your children is affecting them, how your word with your friends is affecting them, and how you're allowing for their opinions to affect you. And especially how your word with yourself, the ones that you use out loud, the one that people observe, and the ones that you use behind closed curtains, closed doors, the words that you say that no one else even has any idea that there's that internal battle going on in there. Those words right there are driving your life. And you get to tell the voices that you don't agree with or that you no longer want to agree with, the voices that you want to let go, the people, because we all have them. Every single one of us has them, you guys. They live up there. Tell them to get the F out. Thank you. I acknowledge you for the lessons that you've taught me for the last 44 years. I no longer have a need for you. You have served your purpose. Please light and love. And I like to see this little whatever it is. Like, you could like see the little like dark image just like fluff off to like this beautiful iridescent light. Peace out. That energy, leave me. I'm not listening to you anymore. And are they going to still talk? Are they like, it takes practice, right? But when they're chirping in your ear, you are fat, you aren't good enough, you're done, whatever it is. Thank you, acknowledge you, bye. I don't need you anymore. This is what I'm listening to now. I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am enough. I am positive. I am moving in light and love in a good direction. My life is becoming everything I've ever dreamed and more. And I am going to be so amazed by the results of where I end up, because I am choosing a different way of being from this minute forward. And I hear you chirping over here. I please leave. And then you can go back into it. I hear you chirping again. Please leave. And not even please leave. Just like, you don't have to tell them, please. Just get out. Just bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye. And see how you start to show up. That's that. I am so proud of my boys for almost letting me do a full 33 minutes of talking to you guys with minimal interruption. We're gonna go celebrate that right now. I love you guys so much. I will be talking about the other 3 agreements, of course, and hopefully providing you guys some support on going through those. If this supports you in any way, if you see how, I see how this could definitely change the space that I'm in, make sure you share it with the people who are especially in your bubble. Because the more people that understand the agreements in your bubble, the better you are all going to be together. You guys are a direct influence on each other, like we're talking about right here, right? So if you can positively influence one another to step into your greatest selves, it's going to be easier for all of you because you'll all be flowing in the same direction of light, love, positivity, and personal growth. So make sure that you guys do your best to share that, talk about it with them. Whether you want to grab the book, do a book club, or just share the podcast, that works too, and final thing, don't forget to subscribe for more good stuff here. And remember that perspective reveals miracles in all aspects of your life. I love you guys. Callie Carroll signing off. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.